Welcome to Book Lounge by Libby. I'm Joe, and I'm so happy you're here. This is the place where book lovers, authors, and industry insiders come together to talk about the stories we love and the impact they have. Before we dive in, don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to the Libby app YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. Yes, we have audio and video of the show. You can check it out on the Libby app YouTube channel if you want to watch, or Spotify video as well. If you love what we're doing, consider leaving a review or dropping a comment down below. It helps more book lovers find us. If you want to reach out to me, you've got questions, comments, suggestions for future episodes, you can send an email to bookloungebylibby@overdrive.com. Y'all, we made it to the end of our first season of Book Lounge by Libby. I can't believe we're here already. Somehow we are already at the end of season 1, but remember, this isn't it for the year. You've got a little break to get through with, some bonus episodes sprinkled in there, but then in a few weeks, season 2 will begin and we'll go back to that weekly cadence. I'll give you some reminders and some flows and some things like that as we go into future episodes. And of course, you can always stay tuned and see what's up with me and the show on the Libby app Instagram at libby.app. If you are here for the first time, welcome. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you enjoy the show as a whole. Consider subscribing or following along and checking out other episodes we've done. And hopefully you'll find something you enjoy there as well. Because today I know I have some amazing voices in the Latin American literature space joining me to dig into the genre, the power of storytelling. And then in the second half of this episode, we're going to get you ready to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. But before we do that, I figured I should share, what is Hispanic Heritage Month? When is it celebrated? And, I'm going to do some referencing here. I did a bunch of research for these notes and for these recordings. So all of my links are down below in the show notes if you want to check out anything I'm quoting, anything I'm referencing, or anything I just used in general as some vague inspiration and research. So look at that in the show notes. So first off, from the United States Census Bureau in September 2023, National Hispanic Heritage Month is celebrated in the U.S. from September 15th to October 15th, celebrating the histories, cultures, and contributions of American citizens' families who came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. The observation started in 1968 as a Hispanic Heritage Week under President Lyndon Johnson and was expanded in 1988 to cover a 30-day period. The day of September 15th is significant because it is the anniversary of independence for Latin American countries Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. In addition, Mexico and Chile celebrate their independence days on September 16th and 18th, respectively. In President Biden's proclamation 10446 in 2022, Hispanic heritage holds an indelible place in the heart and soul of our nation, and National Hispanic Heritage Month reminds us that the American identity is a fabric of diverse traditions and stories woven together. Our culture has been enriched by the rhythms, art, literature, and creativity of Hispanic peoples. Now, looking at Latin American literature as a whole, and I'm going to be pulling bits from different articles, as I mentioned, check out the show notes. But Latin America is the collective region that covers over 7 million square miles and a huge number of people, cultures, traditions, and languages. In 2024, we have seen a boom of Latin American fiction. Writers from Argentina alone have been shortlisted for the International Booker Prize Award 4 times since 2020. So a lot of this comes down to what a lot of different scholars and thought leaders on this list as the difference between English and Spanish. I mean, English tends to be direct. There are declarative statements. It's favored by a grammar that wants things to be specific, where Spanish has room for ambiguity. You don't specify subjects of sentences. Spanish allows for more of what English would call a run-on sentence. Language is also influenced by the region's vibrant poetry culture. So overall, Latin America has a much higher poetry culture, higher poetry focus. It's often overlooked, especially in recent years, because of the prevalence of narrative fiction and particularly big novels. But poets and poetry, and poets being national figures, have such an impact on the writing culture, storytelling, and a lot just in general. Writers from Latin America often use tropes from all sorts of genres, without being affected, kind of without it affecting their work, is what I meant to say. And they don't hammer home that they're doing a bit of this. It tends to be just kind of like slipped in. So when you read some early short stories, even from some of the most famous writers in Latin American literature, you'll see Gothic, you'll see horror, you'll see a blend of this, you'll see a blend of that. And a lot of it as well is a conversation on politics in Latin America. Politics seems to be woven throughout the contemporary work of Latin American writers. Um, so things that were prevalent in the 60s and 70s shaped the writing, things that are happening, in the 90s, things that are happening today. It all has a place and a blend in how the writing is impacted and created. The other thing that really stands out to me is I think there is such a beautiful nuance in how translation works, in how we are taking those concepts that we might not have words for in English or that may be difficult to translate. And I think that adds a different level of enjoyment and wonder and mystique to the writing. And of course, Latin America is responsible for one of my favorite genres, one of my favorite things, magical realism. And just some history there. The term to describe as magical realism originated in the 40s and comes from a history of folklore and oral storytelling, especially as the result of post-colonial writing. So lots of that to think on, lots of that to digest. But let's dive into these conversations. With that, talking with me today in two parts are some incredible voices in literature. In part one, we have Ann Dávila Cardinal and Isabel Cañas, and in part two, we have Cleyvis Natera, Isabel Ibañez, and Tamara Yajía. Ann Dávila Cardinal is a Nuyorican, Vermont-based author with an MFA in writing from Vermont College of Fine Arts. She comes from a long line of Puerto Rican writers, including father and son poets Virgilio and Jose Antonio Dávila, and her cousin, award-winning fiction writer Tara Dávila. Ann's first book was a young adult horror novel titled Five Midnights, released by Tortine in 2019. Five Midnights won the 2020 International Latino Book Award in the category of Best Young Adult Fantasy and Adventure, an Audiophile's Earphones Award for the audiobook, and was a finalist for the Bram Stoker Award. The story continues in Category 5, released in 2020. Category 5 was a 2021 finalist for the same International Latino Book Award category, and her young adult rom-com, Break Up From Hell, was released by HarperCollins in January of 23. Her next YA novel, a horror comedy titled You've Awakened Her, released June 17, 2025. Her first adult novel, the Puerto Rican magical realist mystery The Storyteller's Death, was released from Sourcebooks in October 22 and won the 2023 International Latino Book Award in Popular Fiction. Her second adult novel, We Need No Wings, released September 24. Ann lives in Vermont with her husband in a lovely little house with a massively creepy basement. You can find her on Instagram at Ann Dávila Cardinal. Isabel Cañas is a Mexican-American speculative fiction writer. After having lived in Mexico, Scotland, Egypt, Turkey, and New York City, among other places, she has settled in the Pacific Northwest. She holds a doctorate in Near Eastern languages and civilizations and writes fiction inspired by her research and her heritage. Her new book, The Possession of Alba Diaz, releases August 19th, 2025. You can find Isabel on Instagram at Isabel Cañas _. Cleyvis Natera is a novelist, short story writer, essayist, and critic. She is the author of the debut novel Neruda on the Park, which was a New York Times editor's choice and was awarded a silver medal by the International Latino Book Awards for Best First Book of Fiction. The recipient of awards and fellowships from PEN America, the Vermont Studio Center, Hermitage Artist Retreat, and Breadloaf Writers Conference, Natera studied literature and creative writing at Skidmore College and holds an MFA in fiction from New York University. Her fiction, essays, and criticisms have appeared in Kirkus, the New York Times Book Review, URSA, Time, Gagosian Quarterly, the Brooklyn Rail, the Rumpus, the Washington Post, Pleiades, the Kenyon Review, Asterix, and Quelly Journal, among others. Her second novel, The Grand Paloma Resort, is forthcoming August 2025 from Ballantine Books. Natera currently teaches creative writing at Barnard College of Columbia University and Montclair State University. At Montclair State University, Natera leads the development of a new bilingual MFA creative writing program. Natera's debut, Neruda on the Park, was a most anticipated book of the year by Time, The Today Show, Good Morning America, Entertainment Weekly, and Goodreads, among other publications. Neruda on the Park was selected by Nobel Peace Prize laureate Malala Yousafzai for her Literati Book Club. Natera was awarded the 2024 Toni Morrison Fiction Fellowship at Breadloaf Writers Conference and the 2024 Voices Rising Fellowship at the Vermont Studio Center. Natera has been admitted to the Fulbright Associates program through April 2027. This program will enable Natera to participate as a creative writing teacher and guest writer abroad. Additionally, Natera's writing has been supported through awards, fellowships, and artist residencies by PEN America, Roland Writers Retreat, Hermitage Artist Retreat, Vermont Studio Center, Virginia Center for Creative Arts, Breadloaf Writers Conference, Disquiet International Literary Program, Voices of Our Nation Arts Foundation, and Juniper Summer Writing Institute. She is on Instagram at Cleyvis Natera. Isabel Ibañez is a USA Today, Indie, Sunday Times, and #1 New York Times bestselling author of whimsical historical fantasies for teens and adults. She has written many highly acclaimed novels, including Woven in Moonlight, which is listed among Time Magazine's 100 best fantasy books of all time, and was a finalist for the William C. Morris Award, as well as the best-selling Secrets of the Nile duology, Together We Burn, and Written in Starlight. She is the proud daughter of Bolivian immigrants and has a deep love for history, traveling, and writing stories where her characters are often running for their lives. She currently lives in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina with her family, their adorable golden doodle, and an overwhelming number of books. You can find her on Instagram at Isabel Ibañez Books. And Tamara Yajía. Tamara is an Argentine writer, comedian, and ex-child star who authored the 2022 poetry collection, Poems I Wrote While Taking a Shit. She also wrote and starred in a one-woman show, Coming of Age. Tamara has written for Clickhole, Funny or Die, and several comedy series, including Acapulco, This Fool, and the upcoming Netflix series Strip Law. Currently, she is developing a show for Apple. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband and her dog Odie, who just pooped on the living room floor. You can find her on Instagram at Tamara Yajía. Now with that, let's turn the page and dive on in. Well, Ann, Isabel, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
I am so excited to talk to both of you. Your work is incredible. The styles that you write in and the different ways that you blend to your audiences. And I love the way that you could be going from writing about Bad Bunny to kind of like your own version of adult fiction and your twist and your take. And then Isabel, I never know what's coming next. I mean, I can't wait to read a possession story from you coming very soon. So both of you are absolutely incredible. I could gush forever about your writing, but let's dive into why we're here today. To get us started, I am looking forward to talking to you both about your process and the impact and importance of culture in your writing. But to start, where did you both find that spark? What started you writing? And we'll have you go first.
Sure. I mean, I was raising a son named Carlos in a very rural town in Vermont, and my mother had passed before he was born, and so I wanted him to know the family stories. They're very important to me and to our identity, and so I started writing them down. And it sort of took off from there. Found out half of them were fiction anyway, so I might as well have fun with them. And it just started this ball rolling because I've always loved reading fiction. And so that was sort of where it started. And now I just love diving into making things up.
Love diving into making things up. That's an incredible way to put it. But I love that the tradition is there the whole way through, from kind of like family and oral storytelling to publication where you are today.
Exactly.
Isabel, what about you?
Well, I came at writing through as like a 10 or 12-year-old through fan fiction. I think as many
Awesome.
writers do. Yeah, I was so into Lord of the Rings. I continue to be a massive Lord of the Rings girly.
You see my tattoos?
And Queen, I love it.
LOTR geek.
As if I could not love you more. I love it. I love it. I love it. LOTR tattoo, photo of Santo Benito or portrait of Santo Benito on the wall behind you. I love it. I love it. So I started writing Lord of the Rings fan fiction, and I wrote self-insert fan fiction, as many a 12-year-old is wont to do. And I really imprinted on the Mirkwood elves if one is familiar with the LOTR
Interesting.
universe, because the way they're described in the text, unlike Orlando Bloom and his gorgeous blonde wig in the movies, they're described as having darker complexions and darker hair. And I was like, I guess, like, you know, unconsciously as a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, I was like, aha, I have found the Latinos. And these are my people, and I will write stories about them. Because at the time, you know, in the early aughts, when I reached for fantasy literature, when I reached for genre literature, there was, you know, there weren't any characters who looked like me. I was desperately grasping at any brunette, like in Tamara Pierce, like Dane in the Immortal series. I was like, she's my girl. She's got textured dark hair. Like, this is my people. And, you know, it's not the same, because at the end of the day, authorship and identity imbues stories with so much more than just words. And I'm sure we'll talk about this later. But I was desperately looking for reflections of myself in literature that I did not find until I became an adult. And I was a teenager, early 20s, and I started reaching for Isabel Allende. I started reading Sandra Cisneros and the other greats of Latin American literature. But what I wanted so much was to blend my down-to-the-bone love of genre literature, and that. The place where those two streams meet is where all of my writing comes from. And I was especially drawn to horror in particular after, you know, spending the first 10, 15 years of my writing career, air quotes, because it started so young and so fan to me, writing fantasy, because I'm Mexican. I was a goth kid. There was nothing more goth than in the world than being Mexican. Like, look at our iconography. But as Octavio Paz once wrote, death is the Mexican's best friend. Like, he jokes with it. He embraces it. He loves it. There's so many ghosts in my family oral history that, and there's so much a part of, like, the oral history that my mother tells about, like, my own birth and where I came from, that they've always been with me. And so I write them.
I can't stop smiling. Like, yeah, punk rock, Puerto Rican punk rocker from New York. Yeah, you're my people.
I love that. I love that, because like I'm sitting here at the end of all of my recordings and thinking of every topic we've kind of touched on this year goes back, or this season goes back, to that sense of community and kind of looking for what you have wanted to see for yourself, finding a way to fill the gap. And I think about that in conversation with Juno Dawson when we were talking about queer and trans representation in literature. I think about that with our Indigenous reading recommendations. I think of that in so many different places. I mean, even with our summer reads episode for kids, we were looking at Jamie Sumner's work, talking about writing books for kids with disabilities to see themselves reflected in writing. Do you find that culturally it makes it easier to embrace some level of storytelling and going, I am being outright and direct and representative of who I am and what I come from? Or do you think that this is more your own personal brand of tenacity that's like, no, my story needs to be told because I need to rep for the girl who had to find the elves who looked like her, or for the Puerto Rican kids in the Bronx? Like, what does that mean to you? How do you fight for your space in publishing?
Yeah, I think it's definitely both.
Yeah.
Because we write stories from our own experience, but you also want to write for what the books you wished you could read, particularly when I write for young adults. But you even when you don't intend it, Joe, it finds its way in there.
Sure.
And particularly, like Isabel said, the genre, you really didn't see it there.
Not at
And
all. I
all,
love that. Like that.
yeah, it was all written by 40-something white men from New England.
Right.
And it was like, wait a minute, and the thing is that when you're in Puerto Rico, and I know this is true in Mexico too, here you tell people you believe in ghosts and they think you're off your meds. You say it in Puerto Rico and they're like, seguro. My grandmother was at the end of my bed this morning. And it's like, magic is accepted. And so it's so fun to sort of blend that, do magical realism and horror. And so the culture is always present.
And I will say, and any longtime listeners know, this is completely indulgent for me because my two favorite genres are magical realism and horror. So, you know, but right, and I was raised the amount of Catholic that is also very quick to say, "Oh, you did see your grandmother at the end of the bed today? Well, I smelled my grandfather when I walked in the back door, so."
Oh,
Girl, you're my
olfactory
people. You
Yes.
are my people.
I may be 30s white, but
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 there's a certain
I've
brand of
got that.
Catholicism. Yeah.
Exactly, and I've got the right brand of Catholicism.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been both really difficult and really easy because there is something that comes so naturally about writing for the self that I was at 15, 16, desperate for these books. There's something very scary about it because it's so liberating. I spent so many years of my early writing life trying to write the kinds of books I was reading, which were super white. And something obviously just wasn't clicking, and it was really hard. Something didn't work. And it wasn't until I shrugged off those chains and really let my freak flag fly. And by freak flag, I mean my humanity. And that it really started, the pieces started to click. And it was difficult though, because when I did that, I wrote a young adult fantasy that was very influenced by my childhood living in Mexico City and by Mexica or Aztec mythology. And my agent and I went out on submission on it with it, and it died a long, agonizing death because it was too Mexican. My previous work wasn't Mexican enough. And the words were too confusing. The names were too long. It was too. It made me very angry. Instead of becoming bitter, which is something, it was the whole theme of that book, was like letting go of being bitter, LOL. I decided to channel that rage into something productive, which is where a lot of my best ideas come from. And I wrote a haunted house story, and that became The Hacienda, which was my debut adult novel. I find that the children's market then, this was back in 2018, 2019, was very difficult to break into. It continues to be difficult to break into, but it was very unforgiving in terms of, and I say this with heavy air quotes, complicated world building. Anything that is not spoon-fed, Anglo-centric, Western European derived world building. So I guess one question I get asked a lot, and I've been thinking about this because the promotion cycle for The Possession of Alva Diaz is kicking off, and so I get asked this frequently. It's like, why do you write the heroines that you write and incorporate the elements that you incorporate as a Mexican American writer? And I know these questions are asked in good faith a lot of the time, but they just make me mad because at the core of this question is, why should we care about people like you? Are you human? Tell us more. And I think in this day and age, in this country, accepting that people like us deserve space and deserve our stories told is a radical notion. And I hate that the bar is so low, but it is. And I write because I'm human. I write for humans like me who speak my language, who share my ghosts. And how dare the world out there, be they, behind desks in the great machine that is traditional publishing, or people strolling into libraries for Latinx Heritage Month, question my humanity. I don't know. I've not had enough coffee. So you get unhinged Isabel. That is ragey Isabel.
But I love that rage, that unhinged. It's so true. Like, writing questions for me, it's the like, well, I know why you write. I know the passion is there. And as a queer person, I know the like, well, we're all fighting something right
Yeah.
now.
Mhm.
We're all fighting something right now. But to be in, like, when you're in the very traditional tour space, and it's just like, okay, so why a Mexican woman? And you're just like, what? I
It's
mean, like, that's beyond, like, not only is it like bad journalism, it's just like, it's boring. I mean, I want to
indeed.
know why that, I want to know like the depths of the culture that, I want to know the dream that you had one night that made you go like, that's the idea. But the thought of just like, why should we care breaks my heart. And
Yeah.
I hope everyone hears that and just takes a moment to think about like what we're saying here.
Yeah, storytelling is like at its heart the most human thing that we do on a daily basis. Whether we're, contando chisme, we're sharing, like we're gossiping about like so and so at work or whatever, or telling a joke or talking about our families or sharing fiction in visual media, in written media. It is at its core the thing that unites all of us. And so we all do it. It's so essential to our being. So I don't know. Of course, I write what I write, and of course,
Right.
um, yeah, I've wandered so far off your question. I
That's
apologize.
okay. But that's okay. That's what this is about. The questions are just to get us somewhere. And this is
We're
where we're
getting
going.
warmed
And I
up.
love it. No, I love this direction. I mean, I think along those lines, I'm curious to hear how both of you feel about the publishing space and some of the changes over the last few years. I mean, other than maybe recently, although I know from publishers, episode 7, if you haven't listened, book bans. I talk with Skip Dye from Penguin Random House about PRH's efforts to fight book bans and all of the other great activism work other guests on that episode are doing as well. But other than recently, and I know we're all still trying our best, it seems like there has been a second Latin American boom in literature. It's a quote from an article that I've mentioned in the intro, but Fiametta Rocco said that the International Booker Prize um, has 4 novels or 4 authors since 2020 to 2024 have been in the Latin American lit space. So, do you think that is indicative of demand, a change in how things are published, uh, more readiness and acceptance and pulling for stories? What kind of comes to mind to both of you when you think of some of the changes in the lit space and the publishing space lately?
I'll just brain vomit because I immediately have a cynical answer. And my cynical answer is that Mexican Gothic made bank. Sylvia Moreno Garcia busted open doors for us. And this is like the International Booker Prize is one thing, but it's particularly in the American publishing space. Um, Sylvia demonstrated so clearly that there is demand for Latin American horror in particular. And my cynical answer is that publishing absolutely loves it's a inherently risk averse market and it loves a done deal. And so they were like, let's do it again. Um, and so I rocked in like, hey, I'm not doing it again. I've got something different, but you can market it in a similar way. Knock yourselves out. I don't care. I'm going to keep doing my own thing.
You can
That's
put the
my cynical.
comps, you can put the pull quote on the
Exactly.
cover, like,
Exactly.
yeah.
What grinds my gears is when uh Mexican Gothic gets used as a comp for stories that are not inherently post-colonial. That grinds my gears. I could, oof, that makes me mad. But my more optimistic answer is that Mexican Gothic showed that people want this kind of story. And that's fantastic because I think there is a hungry Latin American readership. There is a hungry, diverse readership in the United States, honestly, worldwide, of course. But specifically, my experience is tied to the American market. And there is an enormous hunger for these kinds of stories. And I think it's kind of the reason why, Sinners is an absolute blockbuster, is because it's telling the stories of that have not in such a way that have not been told before, because the horror market has been so dominated by, like what Anne said earlier, like genre has been dominated by like ye old 40-year-old cis white man from the Northeast. A horror on screens and horror in books has very much been dominated by a particular narrative and by, like chapeau to Sylvia Moreno Garcia. She's really just was a massive break in the market that showed like, yo, publishers, yes, like cynically, hey, you can make a big buck here, but also like, look at this readership. Look what they want. And so what that does is it allows writers like us to come in and ride the elevator up.
It's such an interesting opportunity to see like the demand the clear line of like representation matters and watch it grow with us, because right, the American market is, you're absolutely right, so different from the International Booker Prize market.
Mhm.
Like translation in the United States happens so much less, and I mean, yes, it's growing, but shockingly less compared to everywhere else, and it tends to be the staples from other countries. So
Mhm.
it's yeah, it's fascinating to watch what one impact can do. And I think your answer is kind of like the both sides of the sword. Like, hey, we can make money, and oh, great, cool, we are also meeting a need.
Mhm.
The buying power of the Latino market
Hmm.
is trillions and trillions of dollars, and they can't deny it anymore in one hand. And the other thing is that we're finally getting a voice, or a seat at the table, albeit not as much, relationship wise as it should, but it is it is the time. And also, you brought up colonization. You can't sort of
Mhm.
help it. I mean, Mexican Gothic is colonization is fungus. I mean, you don't get any
Mhm.
better than that, right? So, and as a Puerto Rican writer, the long Puerto Rico is the longest lasting colony in the history of the world, and they're fighting their own battles now on the island. And to sort of go down there and see what my family's going through, and it's like, so there's this a way to get the stories out in front. Puerto Rico is a very small island, and I ran into similar things that Isabel did, which is like, well, it's just particularly when you deal with Hollywood. Oh, it's such a small island, and filming around the water is expensive, and da da da. And it's like, you know, people love the story. I mean, I read to be exposed to other cultures. Nyerio Korofo. I mean, I just inhaled the work out of Legos, and I mean, that's one of the reasons I read. So the idea that people want to read just about people like them, I think is a myth for a lot of people. For that's not true of the whole market.
Oh, right.
Amen.
A
Yeah.
1000%, because we know that yes, it's important to see ourselves represented, but right, I mean, I can throw a lot of rocks and see versions of myself, and I'm not interested in reading about me. I want the experience that I didn't have. I want to understand perspectives and see different sides, different takes, different tastes. Like there's just so much to the world. And the thing I love, I have a big passion for literature and translation in general, just like what impacts culturally, what impacts in writing styles, what happens when you take a language that is much more beautiful than English and doesn't have comps. There's nothing comparable for some things. And I just go like, well, now I have to see what that means and try to understand. Like there's so much richness that you get from experiencing not yourself. So I'm with you. Just I don't know. I don't
But I bet you connect on a very basic way with those characters.
exactly.
That's the formula.
That's
Mhm.
the biggest thing is that like I'm not reading it feeling like an outsider. I am
Exactly.
absolutely reading it like a welcome participant. Like there is something I can wholly connect to and I go, "Oh, well, I was with you, but no, I don't have a reference for that," or "I'm grateful that I have never experienced that, but that could also happen to stories that are from here." So, absolutely, it's definitely just that kind of like it's I don't know, it's like my friends aren't all like boring white people. Like your life is what you make of it. And I think our literature needs to be the same. Like spice it up, change it up, do a little bit of everything.
Exactly.
When you are both writing, how do you find that elements of yourself come into the storytelling? How do you ever make an effort to blend your heritage into your writing, either consciously or because as you've both already said, like you write what you know, you write who you are, you write where you've been. Like what is the balance between I am doing this as a part of the conversation and growing our space, and what is just you would do this if you were X, Y, or Z?
So I recently realized that I approach this differently when I write different genres. When I'm writing
Sure.
fantasy, it feels like I'm more um easily able to be carried away outside of myself, I think, and outside of the identity that I live in this world because I'm writing a secondary world the vast majority of the time I'm writing fantasy. And I'm patchworking it together from, my own background, but also things I've read, things I've studied. I have a PhD in medieval Islamic history. So, there are all sorts of like fun Easter eggs to weave in from there. I've read a lot. So I think when one is creating a secondary world, there's always a plethora of influences that get baked into that beautiful, beautiful cake that ends up being the secondary world. When I write in this world, albeit in a historical setting, when I write horror, there's something about what horror demands of you as a writer that makes me approach it in a different way as an artist. Horror is a genre that simply does not tick without a real beating heart, a real character, a real struggle that they're going through that the reader can empathize with. Because without that, what you have is like a B slasher fic. The scares don't land, especially like black words on a printed page. You don't have like the visual effects, the sound effects um that visual media has to like amp up a horror and make it good. With horror in writing, there are only so many tools that you have at your disposal. And without the character, the clock doesn't tick. And so when it comes to writing that character, that beating heart of a horror story, for me, I have to cut down to the bone. I really dig deep. And so for me, that's where my identity, my cultural background, my family history, shit gets really personal really fast in a way that it doesn't with fantasy. And I think I know actually, it's made me a better writer because I'm afraid of being hurt. I think many of us are. I'm afraid of hurting emotionally. It's not something that's comfortable, it's not something that's fun, but horror asks for that. It asks for you to write the difficult things. It asks you to write the things that make you cry and that wound you. And so that's where all the richness of my whole background comes to the page. So when it comes to writing horror, I actually like really struggle to write horror that isn't very influenced by my identity and my background. And Anne is nodding emphatically. I want to hear what she has to say.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I start from that because you have, first of all, I'm very conscious as somebody with privilege within the Latinx community that I am half, and I'm not going to try to tell stories that I can't. Like I can't write a main character who grew up on the island because I don't understand that. But beyond that, you sort of start from the things that are important to you so you can put that passion that you were talking about in it. When I was writing We Need No Wings, I had this realization that being a woman of a certain age, you hit 60 and suddenly you're invisible and you're treated as if you have less to offer, but it's actually the opposite that is true. And this became really interesting to me because there's so much power in not giving a shit what people think anymore. You think you don't care now, Joe? Just wait. And so it fascinates me. So I wanted to tell stories, particularly of women of that age group. And so I'm writing a punk rock Miss Marple story right now, a novel for Source Books. And I'm so excited. But it was like she started from me. And then because as a Latin punk, that was not a thing when I in the 80s. That was just not. And I was in the club scene. And so I wanted to sort of tell those stories from my experiences. But she ended up with trauma that was not mine. And it was really interesting because I write a lot about Storyteller's Death was very much about my growing up with an alcoholic parent and my father dying when I was young and how that affects you. This was like completely different. And it's sort of like you go, where did that come from? But as I said with you, Joe, it's like there is a root that you connect with that even if the rest of the experience isn't the same, at the heart, at that passion, it is.
Absolutely. First off, I think my favorite sentence of the day is punk rock Miss Marple. Uh, can't wait to read that. That sounds amazing. But absolutely, I today we are here to talk about culture and heritage and what we're about to celebrate in the coming weeks. in that sense. But at the end of the day, and I think what it turns back to in a lot of these conversations is that you are both authors. There is no box to put you in other than the boxes you choose to work within. Like, I don't know, Isabel, your experience in writing horror and your own personal trauma flowing into it, you are writing horror. Your experience colors that, but
Absolutely.
and the same thing to you, Anne, of like where your trauma starts and then when it transforms, like none of this, none of your writing has to be because Mexican, because Puerto Rican, because whatever. But so I recognize that, but also like you two
It
are such
is.
important voices in the space, and it does feed back into the conversation as a whole.
Yeah. I resisted writing these like magical realism specifically for the longest time. I actively pushed against it. And I think a lot of the time my work kind of people ask me, "Oh, you write magical realism." It's like, "No, ma'am, I write gothic horror." Or this is just secondary world fantasy. Like push glasses up nose, get your genres right. But I was very resistant to being typecast. I did not want to be simply shunted off to the side as, "Oh, another magical realism thing. We don't actually need to give that a ton of space." I have visceral memories as like like in my early 20s, like sitting down to write a story, and what flowed forth was very much in the vein of Isabel Allende's The House of Spirits, and I put it away because I didn't want to be typecast or shoved into a box that was too small for me as a writer. Because all writers are, we live thousands of lives, we are thousands of people. Many of us write across genres. And to make a career out of that is very tricky. Someone who does it magnificently is Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Of course, she writes across genres. Every book is different. But publishing really struggles to deal with authors wanting to do new and different things because marketing, because limited resources, whatever
The
answer you
box.
have. The box is safe, the box is good, the box is risk averse, and if it's churning out a few dollars a year, fantastico, we're doing great. But I think yeah, I really resisted being typecast, and I wrote really bad work as a result. And it wasn't until I turned in and started writing from the bone that that sort
Ooh,
of
I love that line.
storytelling flowed forth. And it's so interesting how as much and it's interesting that you mentioned that you're Catholic, Joe, as well, because the Catholic thing is very interwoven with this for me as well. Um, the farther I tried to run from it, the worse my writing got. And it wasn't until I sat down and looked in the mirror and wrote a story about a priest.
A hot priest, excuse me.
Thank you, Anne. But
A
like
hot priest.
Yeah, I
20-year-old
second
me,
that.
if you had told 22-year-old me that she would be writing a ghost story, okay, yeah, about a priest. What? Stop. No. But that's where it comes from. And I think, I don't know, I was just trying to write the truest story I could, that was still a story. We're still spinning yarns. Like Anne said, like there's a bit from life here, there's a bit from life there. It gets woven up like, oh yeah, this is my little shiny piece of trauma. I'm going to inject it into the book. But then other things blossom from it that maybe you don't have direct experience of, but it's all informed by who you are as a person and the way you have experienced life and stories. And so I write the books I write, and they are hella Catholic sometimes.
Oh, uh, this one, this is Santa Teresa de Avila is at the heart of
Yeah,
this one.
yeah.
No matter how much we try.
The
You can't,
trauma,
the
the
farther you
past.
run, the more
Yeah.
yourself keeps up. Like there's,
Yeah, I'm a recovering Catholic, but it still needed to be told.
Same.
Yeah.
I I really just appreciate that kind of look at yourself for both of you to go that like, oh well, trying to deny it didn't work. It didn't make my art my art. Well, I know I have to let you both go soon, but I don't want this to end.
neither do
I-
I.
Yeah,
And
you're definitely my people, you two.
Yes.
we, I mean, we found all the right beats immediately. But before I let you both go, What are you working on right now? Where can people find you online? All that important stuff. We gotta get the plugs in there. And at the time of recording, you have a new book that's like just coming out. Do you want to start us off?
You've awoken her.
Look
This
at that
is my
cover.
Cthulhu in the Hamptons novel. Um, I had a good time with this one as a queer main character, an ace male, which was hard. I didn't think they'd go for, but they did. I had a good time with that, and I'm working on the punk rock Miss Marple. And I'm just moving forward. I write weird stuff, and I like that.
There's nothing wrong with it because me and so many others like reading weird stuff. Like I keep on keeping on whether and you're writing all age ranges. You give us a little taste of everything. Where can we direct people if they do you have website, social, whatever you prefer?
I do, Ann Dávila Cardinal. And I also am pretty active on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I try, but Instagram is probably my most active.
Perfect. And it will be linked. Both of your info will be linked in the show notes, of course. But you know,
Thank you.
I've got to give you both the opportunity to say it out of your mouths instead of just from me. And Isabel, how about you?
So I can be found on isabelcañas.com, CAANIS. You can find the link to my newsletter there. I am so dormant on socials because I have 2 under 2 and I am drowning. I have Instagram. You can find me there. I will be more active during the promotion cycle of The Possession of Alba Diaz, which is my next book. It comes out on August 19th. I'm so excited. I am so excited about it. But I would say for the most the hottest, freshest news right off the press, go to my newsletter. The link is on my website. And yeah, I've got some stuff coming up that I have to be very secretive about, but I am
I
stretching
know.
into new age categories, and I have a very gothic story coming out soon that I can't wait to share with you all. I have spent so many years on it. It's very of the moment. I think I was able to finish it after 16 months of revision because of the moment that we're in and the moment that we've been in since the beginning of this new regime, if you will. And it's, my editor said that he wanted something that was lean, mean, and what the hell did I just read? And I think I've delivered. So I can't wait to share that with you all. But if you want the secrets when as soon as they're revealed, my newsletter is the place to go.
Awesome.
You got us both immediately. We both
I
started
know.
leaning
I'm like,
leaning
"Need it,
in and
Laura?"
wringing our hands.
I cannot wait to talk about this book. It's one of those things that it's one of the hardest things I've ever written. So I cried a lot while writing it. So I think that means it'll be good, right?
Yep. Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
definitely. Well, thank you both so much for joining me today and sharing your experience and sharing so many thought-provoking thoughts. Well, hello everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me. Yeah, thank you.
So excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you all. You all are amazing voices in the space, but also to be able to bring a bit of your experience in publishing and how your culture plays into your writing and just kind of the impact overall. I cannot wait to have this discussion with you all today. Um, so just to kind of start us off in the intro, I talk about Latin American lit and how we seem to be in kind of like the next great boom or rise of Latin American lit. I mean, we're seeing with the International Booker Prize alone, like in the last 4 years, there's at least one Latin American title in the like finalist ranks or winning, and that's so exciting to me. But how do you all feel about this? Where do you think we are? Do you think that this is the indicator of like great things coming? Is this progress or is this what does this all mean to you?
I'll start. I think because, I was born in the Dominican Republic and immigrated to the United States. And I've been so fortunate that from the time I was in college all the way through graduate school, I had a lot of teachers who were like incredibly inclusive of both Caribbean and Latin American culture. I do think that we're in a boom that is like long overdue. Like, because I think the incredible literature has been written, created, celebrated within our own land, for decades and decades. So it's really exciting to see the international landscape catch up to what we've known all along, that it's like, Latinos, Hispanic, Latin American writers have been doing the hard work and the rigorous work all along.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. Long overdue is like the perfect way to put it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I have to say, I'm a newcomer to publishing. I also am an immigrant. I'm from Argentina and
Where in Argentina?
Buenos Aires.
Buenos Aires. I have a lot of family in Córdoba.
Oh, amazing. See,
Yeah.
I've never been, because when I go back to Argentina, I always go back to Buenos Aires, which is where my family.
Yeah.
But yeah, I come from the TV world, and I've seen, I don't want to like talk too much about TV, but I have
Oh,
seen,
you can. No worries.
like Cleyvis said, like there's been a boom not a boom, we're long overdue in TV too. And there has been some making of TV shows that represent Latino voices, but there is so much room to grow.
I think it's really, I've been publishing since 2018, and there has been such a growth, I think, since 2018. And one of the things that has been really sweet is watching the community grow, because it is a small community and you start seeing the same names you recognize, and you kind of have conversations on Instagram or what have you. And so the community has been really constant, and it's been growing, which has been really encouraging, I think.
Oh, bring me into that community.
Yeah,
I need it.
you got it.
I'm like an orphan baby writer.
No.
Well, we'll
What do you
adopt
write?
you.
Yeah, what do you write? I'm not familiar. I'm so sorry. Tell me what you write. I'd love to know.
This first book is a memoir, and it's my debut memoir and book. So before this, I've written TV, mostly comedy.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yes.
Felicidades. That's great.
Gracias.
Yeah.
But this is exactly what I love, is like the sense of community in the world of readers is so important. I think, the pandemic helped us all find a way to connect better across the board. Like we're all sitting here in Zoom right now, and that is no longer a strange thing to have a book club in Zoom, or to have friends that you only know from the internet. And I think that's the really beautiful thing. But also, I think, to all of your points, like community building now for Hispanic voices is so important. And I think the reader base is there. The thing that's also amazing to me is that all of you, everyone in this episode, writes something entirely different from one another, and you all represent the breadth of, like, there is no monolith, it is no one thing. The other thing I really notice, and I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on it, is I read a lot of lit in translation, and I am such a sucker for things that come out of the Latin American space, because there is a poetry, there is a sense of flow, there is a blend between literature elements that doesn't exist in a lot of other writing styles, at least from what I read, that it's very easy to adopt a little bit of horror in just kind of a general slice of life story, or there is a way to go from magical realism to just kind of like a straight narrative. How do you find that your culture and kind of the space of all of cultures that represent this kind of great area impact what you write today?
To me, it comes down to exposure. I think, growing up, I'm Bolivian American. I was born in the United States. My parents are both born and raised in Bolivia. And me and my brother are the only ones who were born here. Everybody else, primos, tios, everybody is still in Bolivia. But growing up, I didn't read any Bolivian stories. They weren't mainstream here in the United States. And as I've gotten older, and when I decided to start writing, my very first book, Woven in Moonlight, was heavily inspired by Bolivian history and politics. And I think that introducing people to that kind of perspective, that political landscape even, I think that they might say, oh, I really like this. This isn't something that I grew up with, but this food sounds delicious. I want to try it. This language is really beautiful. I want to learn it, So I think it comes down to trying to, just exposure and sharing it and talking about it. My childhood upbringing and going to Bolivia every summer and living there every summer. So I wanted to just kind of communicate all these things that were important to me into the stories that I write. So it all trickles through.
For me, it's crazy because it's magic realism is not only the first thing I ever read was stories by Garcia Marquez, but also I'm a Jewish Latin woman, which is, I was thinking about it, and it's crazy how much Judaism and like the culture is so exaggerated, and it's almost like magic realism is in the, texture of Judaism too. So I feel like a lot of that influences me.
I love that. Tamara, I cannot wait to read your work. And Isabel, the same thing with you. I feel like because I didn't travel as much back to the Dominican Republic after we emigrated to the US, I have to say that I think a lot of my influences as I was growing up were very much like the mainstream literature, because the truth is that, as Isabel mentioned earlier, there just weren't a lot of us being published, right? And I remember when I was in high school and college that it was pretty much Julia Alvarez, and we had Esmeralda Santiago, and, we had Cristina Garcia, of course. I think about Edwidge Danticat becoming a giant and Junot Diaz becoming a giant, and then Angie Cruz taking up space, right? But as I was growing up, I remember my first creative writing class in college. Like, I was just trying to be Anne Rice. Like, I was writing about vampires, which turns out that maybe I should have stuck with the vampires.
Yeah, they haven't gone anywhere, huh?
They haven't gone anywhere. Yeah.
And, and at a certain point, I just remember when I got to graduate school, I got an MFA at NYU. And I feel like there was something about like having gone away to college in a predominantly white liberal arts school, being one of the only Latinas, right? And especially for me, I'm an Afro-Latina. I think there was this sense that I had back then that it was like representation is important, write the stories, And then I got to NYU and I was like, no, I want to celebrate the beauty of my country. I want to celebrate the complexities of the women in my family. I don't want to write to that kind of like white gaze, like Toni Morrison said, right? Like we need to write the truth about our communities. And so I feel like I became really empowered just by the intersectionality of my own identity. And I felt like, well, I'm also a Black person, right? Even though I'm not an African-American person. And I just feel like so inspired these days because there are like all these voices, right, that are coming, that are queer voices within the Latin. And it isn't just immigrant narratives, right? Like, which I love that now there's this texture to so much of what we're reading and producing and enjoying.
I love that. It's absolutely that. Like, it does show the space of progress. I think not only is there no longer like the feel and pressure, and I feel like I've had this conversation across a lot of episodes when I was talking queer titles, that like you no longer have to be the perfect or the coming out or the whatever. It's kind of the same thing here as well. Like, you don't have to have the emigration story. You don't have to have a specific narrative. It's like, oh, well, my culture is shaping how I write, the stories I tell, even the way that I just kind of make them shine. But that isn't the front seat. The front seat is the narrative in your head that you need to put on the page. Do you all feel that freedom now?
I do now, but I did not initially.
I bet.
I did not initially. I felt.
And that's like just thinking 2018 or even like prior.
In
Wow, okay.
2018, I think I felt enormous pressure to accurately represent the whole of the Bolivian experience so that somebody might feel a kinship to me. And it was so much pressure. And ultimately, I can only tell the story of what I know and what I love and what I've experienced of my Latinidad. But It took a long time to realize this story that I'm telling is not going to speak for every Bolivian out there. How could it? I was born in the United States and Spanish was my first language, my, idioma materna, but it was not like I grew up in American schools. And so my perspective right from the get-go is going to be completely different. And I had to be okay with that. I think at least initially I felt, am I Bolivian enough to be writing these stories? Am I, because I speak with an accent and in Spanish, am I qualified to put in Spanish? And here's the other component to this too, is that I also don't speak Quechua. My grandfather does, and he was able to help me with a lot of world building and the names in Woven in Moonlight. But that wasn't, I didn't learn Quechua. That's not my language either. But, I was influenced because it's my grandfather, my abuelito, So I felt I felt a lot of pressure, at least initially. And I obviously I'm sure your experiences have been different, but that's been mine.
No, me too, Isabel. Like it was in 2018 that I got my start in TV writing. I got into this fellowship, and like I felt like I had to write the story of my immigration.
Oh.
If I didn't, then why was I there? I was there to tell my story. And to be quite honest, like I didn't feel like it at the time, I wanted to write a story about a mother and a daughter that went on a road trip. And it was pressure I've inflicted upon myself to tell this corny ass, immigration narrative. And that being said, I wrote a memoir now, my first one, about a family who's an immigrant. But I purposely, because my family is a disaster and a messy group of people, I totally leaned into that because I'm so tired of the hardworking immigrant. It's like, what about the not hardworking immigrants? What about the like abusive families that are immigrants? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to see more books about Latin women who are a disaster, is what I'm saying. Like, where are the Otessa Moshfegs that happen to be from Argentina or Mexico or whatever?
I love that. I think that's so important, Tamara. My own experience, I think that there is something to be said about like all the hard work that happened in the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s. Like my book came out in 2022. And at that point, I was almost definitely like 15 years out of my graduate program. So I think like I had been enjoying the fruit of the labor of people like Angie Cruz and Nelly Rosario and, so many other writers of Dominican descent who were writing, and some of them were writing about the immigrant experience. But then I think about people like Juno Diaz, and I think about Julia Alvarez, and I think about, how they also would write home, they would write it. And, like someone like Juno Diaz that grew up in New Jersey and was, I imagine had a lot of the same questions as Isabel, like, is it my place to write the story? And so I don't know, like there was a part of me that felt like I was emboldened by the work that had been done to lay the ground on. And so when I wrote Neruda on the Park, it is an immigrant story. It is about the immigrant experience, but it's really about gentrification and about class. And so I think in a way, I think very often about like carrying the torch forward. And like with my second book that's coming out this August, I guess by the time this comes out, the book would have been out in the past. But the Gran Paloma Resort, for me, I started writing during the pandemic, and I just felt like trapped at home. So I wanted to write these sexy stories about this resort town where like all these people are behaving badly. And then the White Lotus comes out, and I was so upset because I was like, they stole my idea, But fortunately, I still was able to sell my book, and excited for it to be in the world. But just to say that I do feel like some of the pressures that we feel with the second book, with the first book, by the time our careers take off, I think there is more freedom, Joe, for us to kind of write what we want to write or to put our own spin on whatever some of those narratives are that we want to counter.
I think that's really cool. Also, I hope that this encourages you. Any fan of White Lotus, they're going to be like, what? I want to read now. I want to read something like it. And
Totally.
They'll find your book. they'll find your book. You know,
Exactly.
it's not, I think, what does that say? I'm really bad with sayings. It's like all tides, all
Oh, high
tides rise.
tide raises all ships.
Yes. Yeah, that one. I'm so bad at the phrases. Anyway,
I have like a dad inside my brain that just like throws them at me.
I'm glad. So that's what I was thinking when you were talking about. Any fan of the White Lotus, they're going to be like, I want to read something exactly like that. Resort, messy, all this, sexy, and then they'll find your book.
Right. And it makes your pub's job really easy to advertise your book because they can just go White Lotus comp left and right. You want something while you wait for season 4? Here you go.
Yeah.
But Cleyvis, I love your point of it's kind of like that first book. And I think I take that for granted in a lot of my author conversations is like, I love to talk to debut authors and that's where it's like, okay, well, you were at the beginning of it, but I never thought to ask anyone like, what was the first book that you did just to try to like get your name out there to open the gate and then have that attitude of like, okay, well, we did book 1, now book 2 could be whatever. I feel like I love that. You all have such unique perspectives, and I'm thinking now I'm reminiscing on like the episode as a whole, and each of you are from a different part of kind of like the Hispanic culture. The 3 of you here and our 2 guests earlier in the segment, like, and I am both like hit by like the beauty of how much there is, but then also the like, I've put you in a bucket, in a bubble. Like, yes, we're here to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. We're here to do all of this, but it's just like there's just, I don't know, I'm sorry. Like there's just something there where
I know what you're saying, totally. But whatever, if it like elevates us and gives us a space to talk, I'm happy. Like
But I have to say, and maybe it is because when I was in college, I did a lot of Latin American literature, and then I teach college now, both undergrad and graduate, and I just had the immense pleasure of like teaching a film and fiction class as part of the Latino Studies at my university. And I don't know, like there's something to me that feels so expansive about the fact that nowhere but in the United States would all of us be grouped together, because even regionally, right? Like people, and I am one of those people that actually thinks like, thank you for grouping me together because I feel like it's like hermandad. It's like, we become this, like our identities are expanded. I feel like there's a way in which I lean more into this idea of like an expanded identity that like brings us together and in a way helps us to learn from each other. Isabel was saying before with her own writing, how history has helped shape the work and, even family members helping her with some of the language she didn't speak. And I think that's so beautiful, like I think about like the things I want to do in the future and like feeling like I am part of a legacy, a literary legacy that's not just the Dominican Republic or the Caribbean, but it's really like this kind of like global presence. It makes me feel really empowered.
Oh,
well, thank you. I promise I was not fishing. Like I was sitting here and I went, oh my God, I have been part of the problem.
No.
But I love that concept instead of like, no, this raise again, like the tides were raising all ships. Like this is because I hate the idea of like, oh, let's get super niche and put things in like a very specific bucket. Like the only time I love niche is when I'm like, I need a book to read right now that has these 3 genres or tropes in it. That's when I want to get niche.
It's interesting. I was just thinking of that word niche. It literally in this conversation, because as I've gone through with my career, I started, let's say book 1, Woven in Moonlight. I thought, okay, pressure to speak for and get all of Bolivian culture right. But that's too much pressure. And all I can really do is actually get more smaller, more intimate, more personal. And I actually think I've learned this, but like if you're writing for everyone, you actually are writing for no one. And so now I think as my stories have come up, like as I keep going, I've started to write like, I have a book, it's What the River Knows. And I married my interest in Egypt and with a protagonist who's Argentinian, half Bolivian, half Argentinian. And now she's on this epic adventure. I'm not talking about her experience, about the duality of her heritage, her ancestry, like my mom is from here, my father's from here. I'm not really going into that. I am talking about her, though, going off into this epic adventure. And I feel like as I've gotten a little bit more niche, I wonder if people might, I don't know, if it might be a little bit more beloved by a fewer group of people who think, oh man, I love this kind of story.
Yeah. Because I think you all have the mass appeal of like, I wrote a damn good story, and like, here it is. Like, that's the like through line. Anyone can pick this up and have a great time. But for those who this is their niche, this is their home, this is their, that's the like, oh, well, this is going on the special shelf. Like, that's absolutely it. And I love that thought of, by trying to write for everyone, you wrote for no one. So it goes back entirely to authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have like a quick anecdote of something that happened to me in TV writing. The first 4 jobs I booked on TV, I booked because they were looking for a Hispanic female. So I got the job because I was Latina. And then I started being like, I want to book a job because I'm funny and a good writer and not because I'm Latina, right?
Yeah.
And I did. I finally booked it. And then I'm in the writer's room and I'm like, I miss like being amongst the TV show that's about Latinos. Like, now I'm not special anymore.
Now I'm not special anymore. That cracks me up.
But you are special.
You are.
I don't know you at all, but I can tell you, you are everyone here. We're all.
I see a Muppet in the background. The energy is there.
Oh.
Do you all have a way that I think, to me, it sounds like, from what we've talked about so far, it's all very natural. It's your own experiences that just live within you that come through in your writing. Do you ever have any like conscious or intentional ways that you piece in cultural narrative, or does it just rely on your own, like, this is happening subconsciously, this is so much a part of who I am?
Well, I mean, I definitely think that for me, as the journey of my first book was from like first sentence to publication was 15 years. And wow. I feel like that's Neruda in the Park. I wrote and rewrote that book so many times. And because I was growing and changing so much, I mean, I started writing it in my early 20s. And by the time, that the book was published and came out, I was like, already much older than that. And so I just, one of the things that I realized as I was crafting it is that, because I was very concerned with the idea of immigration and the subversion of the idea that like immigrants are guests in the United States. And so for me, so much of what went into like even making that story work is that because it's concerned with gentrification and, in New York City, the characters, I have a character, an older woman, the mother is Eusebia, and the younger woman, it's like, Ivy League educated lawyer named Luz. And for me, it was really important to like carve it out that they considered the United States their home. It was chosen home, And so I just remember as I was like making choices in the crafting of the neighborhood, that it was like important that it be a Dominican neighborhood. And so, I remember thinking a lot about like, what are the songs playing out of the cars? Like what is it that people are listening to when somebody is talking to somebody else on the phone? A lot of food, because I love to eat.
Same.
And so, one of the things that I wanted to do was when I read books, and I love to read books, I just love when I read something and it makes me hungry and then I go and I eat it. And I feel like it's like this really personal experience I'm having with the author. And so, I mean, those were some of the things that I thought about when I was thinking about culture and thinking about how do you do it in a way that feels seamless and in a way that also like invites someone who isn't familiar with it to learn it. But truly the central concern for me is to celebrate it. And someone else that's like, oxtails. Yes, I love oxtails,
I think that's a beautiful way of looking at it. I do the same. And I always do it through a dinner plate. For whatever reason, I think that there is something really inviting, hospitable about talking about the food that you either grew up eating or that you love or this. And so in every one of my books, I don't know, maybe I also have like this goal that I want the reader to become hungry. I have no idea, but I am constantly talking about food. And so it depends on the character, obviously, and where the story is set. But in What the River Knows, Inez is Argentinian and Bolivian. So she talks about, like the different foods that she grew up eating. And I think that that's an accessible way because food is inherently like you have community around food.
It's crazy. I never thought about food. And now I'm like, whoa, there's so much food in my book.
Yeah, I bet.
But it's like, and most of the food in my book is Jewish food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It matters to you. It's important to you. I bet it feels, yeah.
And truly, something about community. Like, what is more community than gathering around a table, like breaking bread? That's such a powerful building block, and it feeds into those, like, no pun intended. See, the dad in my brain feeds into all of those sense memories. I think of like smell being one of the strongest kind of things, and you can recollect that. Oh, when I would come home and mom was making this, you're back there. You're transported.
Yeah, the smell thing is huge. I went overboard with the smell, not only the good smells, but the bad smells. I've always been obsessed. And I'm sure some people that will read my book will be appalled by the smells I describe, but they're the smells I smelled.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's authentic. It's in the memoir for a reason.
When I have to tell you, Tamara, because I love reading memoirs, there's nothing that makes me feel more part of the story than when I have a reaction that is both strong because it's so visceral. And it doesn't always have to be roses, right? Like you want the grit and you want the reality of like what these people are really going through, because we know in a memoir it actually happened. So I think that's fantastic that you did.
We'll talk after you read it.
See how opinions have changed.
No, but
I love it. Do you have alfajores in your book?
I do have alfajores.
Oh my God.
I have a lot of alfajores. I have a lot of cold cuts in my book.
Oh, good. Empanadas, alfajores. Oh man. Yeah.
See, no one can resist talking about food whenever given the chance.
No.
Now, I would love to hear from all of you what you think is on the rise in the storytelling space right now. I mean, I know as a whole, kind of some of the large trends. Are you seeing that with the books that you're reading? And are there any authors that you want to shout out or books you're reading right now that you want to uplift?
Yes. Oh, do I have an arc of I don't know if I have Romina Garber. Okay. Anyway, go ahead. Somebody answer and I'll be thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I'm ready to go. I'm on fire because I just finished reading 2 books that blew me away. And they're releases for this year. Kiara Alegría Huris, who wrote a memoir first, has her debut novel. It's called The White Hat. And that one is coming out in November. Kiara also won a Pulitzer for playwriting. So we're talking about just a phenom, okay? And this book is about a young mother who leaves home, leaves her child, and goes on this kind of odyssey, this journey of self-discovery. And the book is 100 and like maybe 40 pages long. So I'm talking about you sit down and you just devour it. And it was really concerned with motherhood, obviously, but also with rage and with culture. And I just thought that this idea of the Latina woman, right? Like whatever, this person is not an immigrant, but I felt like any other thing that we've been taught to think about Latinas is kind of like turned on its head, And I think it's just going to be a tremendous book. It's fantastic. And it's so beautiful.
Tell me her last name again. Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, what is it?
It's her name is Kiara Alegría Huris, is Hudes, and the book is called The White Hat. And then the second book that I'll tell you, I just read, and that one is coming out in September, is Yakira Diaz's This Is the Only Kingdom. Yakira wrote Ordinary Girls, which won a Whiting Award, was a memoir. And now this is her debut novel. And I mean, Joe, you got to put these people on your list. You got to bring them on your show because Yakira's story takes place primarily in Puerto Rico. And then, at a certain point, there's another immigration that happens. But when I tell you this is about like a neighborhood, a caserio, which I didn't know, because even though I've been to Puerto Rico, I've only been to the resort part. And so I didn't know caserio is like where low-income people live. And it's about a murder that happens and the way that this murder kind of affects this family and this young queer woman. And when I'm telling you that I just felt like this book is so heartfelt, and you see kind of like the legacies of poverty and, colonization, and like the way that it's relevant from like the 1970s to like the present moment, it just blew me away. And it made me think about this kind of turning point that we are all part of, right? Isabel, Tamara, me, in which it is really like not just about telling the truth, but then also pushing each of our genres forward, like breaking boundaries, right? Because I felt like both these books are groundbreaking for very different reasons. And so I'm just really excited for these two books to get, to hit the world, because I think it's going to just be like really just tremendous.
And of course, give all the listeners the heads up here. Everything is linked in the show notes. You can find these books directly from there. And of course, they've seen it already if they're watching, but the covers will have popped up on the screen as you talked about both of them.
Nice.
Awesome. Very cool.
I usually go to Argentina and stock up with books in Spanish, and a lot of them are so hard to find in the United States. And the first book is called Bad Girls by Camila Sosa Villada, and it is about trans sex workers in the streets of Argentina. And it is the most poetic, beautiful. You've read it, Joe?
It is one of the recommendations coming up shortly, I believe, in this very episode.
Oh my God.
So even better, double down.
It's literally,
It's
wow.
gorgeous.
Wow.
It's an incredible book.
And it's crazy because there's no buzz about it in the United States, but in Argentina, it like shook the country. So I really, really recommend that one. And then there's another book called The Story of My Teeth, which is insane, by Valeria Luiselli. I think she's Mexican, but lived in South Africa. And it is an insane book about a man who gets, I think, if I'm telling it right, Marilyn Monroe's teeth put into his mouth. What? It's crazy. I might be wrong by whose teeth it is, but yeah, I highly recommend.
Okay, so the book that I would love to recommend, you were talking about trends, or, I have been seeing that kind of like what you were talking about, but just writing the story that you want to read and infusing it with your own perspective, your cultural heritage. Okay, but I've got Romina Garber. It's called The Last Vampire. I thought that you might like this. And I'm just going to read like the very first paragraph, but it's when a boarding school opens up in a condemned Victorian manor buried in the woods of New Hampshire, Austen-loving Lorena Navarro enrolls in hopes of finding her own Mr. Darcy. Instead, she stumbles across a coffin and accidentally awakens the world's last vampire. Sign me up.
Sign me up. That sounds amazing.
It's young adult. It's young adult, which is where I started out. So I read a lot of YA, and I love Pride and Prejudice. Love vampires, and Romina is just a sweetheart. So and it comes out December 2nd.
I love it. You can tell that we all have advanced readers stacked around us.
Yeah,
but that's good, because we want to see it all coming. That is incredible. Thank you all. I'm like, the chance to sneak in book racks is my favorite thing to do.
Yes.
So I'm here for it. But before I let you all go, what is something that, if you were to say it right now, you hope to see change in the next few years within your space and writing? I know a heavy one to end on before we go to like happy plugs and things coming up.
Well, I mean, I feel like just because it took me like decades to, kind of launch my writing career, I think a lot about the access to new voices that sometimes just kind of shrinks until it disappears. And, I get very worried because I don't know, Isabel and Tamara, how you felt, but when I sold my book in 2020, right after the pandemic, there was like this explosion of literary voices, right? And in literary fiction, where it's where I'm situated in the industry, it was just like really exciting, seeing these voices from Latin America, Central America, the Caribbean, immigrant voices, people who had never been out of the country, right? Like, but all of us are, part of being Latinos. And I don't know, like, I just feel like in the last year, I've noticed just like a dearth, like it's just a lot less, even in the last 3 years. And I really worry about what that means. And even as, the climate in this country is changing toward immigrants, I really worry about like our placement. Like, I think we've gained so much ground and it's so beautiful. And so like the one thing that I really do hope that it changes is that I think it's really important for everyone to recognize that who we are Americans. Who we are, regardless of the fact, right, that I have an immigrant, that I'm an immigrant and I have an accent. I mean, I've been a U.S. citizen for like 20 years, so I think it's just really important for me that we not be seen as niche, that we be seen as part of the fabric of America, and that it isn't episodic, the way in which our voices are celebrated and the way in which our stories are given room to be part of the larger storytelling, just the landscape of the entire country. I mean, that's something that I think about a lot.
No, it happened in TV too, Cleyvis. There was like 2020, there was like all of these shows being bought about, Latin families or whatever. And then now it's like, well, we did that. We don't need to keep doing it anymore. And there's been a dip, and I hope it changes. I would just say I'd like to see edgier stories from Latin American writers.
I'm going to try and say this. I don't think it's going to come out right, but I have this thought in my head about it. I think that there is, when stories come out from people of color, from marginalized communities, I think that there is a hyper focus on critique that is not present from white books, white centered characters. And in my experience, as not only being a part of the publishing community, but also just observing peers, colleagues going through that hypercriticism, I think that what I'd love to see is a little bit more grace and curiosity, as opposed to coming in and maybe the first thing is, you didn't get this right. You didn't get this right. And I think that authors, we all make plenty of mistakes. And of course, intent is important, but there is an imbalance, I think, in marginalized stories taking a lot of, I don't know if it's perfectionism. I don't know if it's because of that pressure. I don't know if it's because there's such few stories that are published, and so they all have to matter in a specific way. I think as the community has grown, I think that selling stories like this has become harder because there's been backlash or critique, canceling, what have you. And I think it makes, people who are spending money nervous, publishers or what have you. So I wonder if there's, I don't know what exactly the change would have to be, but I think it might mean giving people the benefit of the doubt too.
Absolutely. All I can think of is like when you said some grace. There's a lot of like white mediocrity that does not see any of the flack or expectation that anyone else sees. And it doesn't even matter if it doesn't matter where you intersect with that. It's like there's a lot of things. It's like, yeah, that was fine. There were like 12 errors and none of it made sense, but I bought 30 copies. And if you aren't meeting the expectations of either the most niche or the most widespread group, no matter what, it's like it almost feels like when someone opens your book, they have to go like, okay, well, prove me wrong that I should finish this, rather than I
I'm
just
here
want
to
a great
enjoy it.
story. Exactly.
I'm here to celebrate. I'm here to enjoy this point of view, however niche it might be. And I think that comes with, right, that word, exposure. The more stories that there are, I think that people's needs will be met, but because there are few, I just think that there's this big spotlight and it can be very harsh.
Yeah, all I could really think of while you were going through kind of your different thoughts of why was like, it's D, all of the above. Like, and the fear to do the buy-in, to say, I'll put money behind this, and taking away access defeats the purpose, or like does the opposite of what we all want to happen. That like you were saying, exposure. The more stories that are out there, the more saturated the market, and the more like normalized doesn't feel like the right word, but normalized, so that way there isn't that like built-in critique.
So true, Isabel. Wow.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting here thinking how I was going to communicate this. It's
a great
more
job.
feeling.
You did a great job.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, because it resonates with me really deeply.
I'm going to start copying what you said and say.
Yeah. Well, I'll send you the transcript. Well, thank you all for joining me today. Before I let you go, I wanted to make sure you all had a moment to share anything you're working on right now, or what's coming up, and where the folks can find you online. I'm just going to let the alphabet be my guide. Cleyvis, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I'm so happy to have been here. This was an absolute delight. I feel like hermandad with Tamara and Isabel. This is lovely. I'm most active on Instagram, Cleyvis Natera, and anyone can find me there. The Gran Paloma Resort is the book that just came out this summer, and so please read it. I promise you, it's so good and juicy and sexy. You're gonna love it. And I cannot wait to read Isabel and Tamara's work. I'm excited to discover you along the Libby readers.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Isabel, how about you?
You can find me on Instagram. It's my only social media account that I'm active in and participating in. It's the Isabel Ibañez books. The books that just came out were the What the River Knows and Where the Library Hides. They're a duology young adult, but I'm working on my debut adult. It comes out January 13th. I'm very excited and nervous. I'm so nervous, but excited too. And that one's called Graceless Heart. It comes out January 13th. It's very romantic. It's set during the Renaissance, a little bit of everything, and obviously delicious food. So there's that.
That sounds gorgeous. And Tamara, how about you?
You can find me on Instagram at Tamara Yajía, Yajia. That's mostly what I use. And my memoir, Cry for Me, Argentina, My Life as a Failed Child Star, comes out.
Such a great title.
I was a child star. It comes out July 1st. So it might come
will
out
be
by the
out.
time this airs. And and I think anyone that has had a rough life or is a weirdo in any way will probably like this book.
I'll be
And
number
anyone who
one.
likes Madonna will like my book too.
I love it. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. You are all incredible. And now I will pass it over to me in the future, sharing book recommendations with you. Well, hey, y'all, it's that time in the episode where we take a little break before our next segment. Honestly, I can't believe, 1, that we're at the end of season 1, but 2, that we got all the way to the end before I showed you how to create tags. So let's hop into my demo library in Libby and rectify that. Okay, so we are in Libby right now, and we are in the midst of a list. I want to show you how you can just quickly make a tag no matter what page you're on in Libby, or how you can add titles to tags if you've already got tags existing. But before we do that, let's just do quick orientation. At the bottom of our Libby screen, we have our navigation bar. The magnifying glass is how you can do a search, title, author, series name of a magazine. The building here, this is a library building. So this is the main page you can scroll through, and you can look for different books and things you want to try out from different curated lists created by your library. the center here, these 3 lines, this is our menu. From here, you can do things like find and contact help and support. You can swap between your different libraries and so many other features. Then the stack of books, that will take you to your shelf where all of your loans and holds live. And then last, we've got this little icon here. What does this look like? To me, it looks like a tag that you might see in a department store or that you might see on a gift or a present. So this is where all of your tags will live. If you tap on this, it will take you to all your different tag lists. You can go there to create or export them, but we're just going to go from right in a list. So say you're scrolling around in one of the different curated collections. Remember, we're in my demo library right now, so I don't have a ton of things preset because this gets to be kind of our let's do this for the first time together experience. And we're going along and I see right here, Space Usagi White Star Rising. I'd like to create a graphic novel tag. This way, when I'm mood reading and I go, I really need a graphic novel right now, I could hop right into that tag list to either have just a general TBR that's everything. I like to make one for the year that I'm in. So on my own Libby, I have a TBR 2025 for different books that just kind of go en masse. But when I have specific vibes as a mood reader, I have a thriller tag, I have a graphic novel tag, I have some like oddly specific ones. So let's make them and then you can get creative all on your own. We're going to tap on this tag. And then we'll see we've got 2 tags already existing. These are smart tags that are made for you by Libby when you take certain actions. So we've got this bell icon. This is our Notify Me smart tag. That's the way we recommend books for our library to purchase for the digital collection. And Libby will let us know if and when those are added. And then we've got the borrowed smart tag. Any book or whatever that you borrow in Libby will have this little receipt emoji attached to it. So when you're scrolling through, if you see a book with that emoji next to it in the tag field, you'll know that you already borrowed it, which might be your indicator that, oh, I think I read that already. But let's instead say create new tag. We've got some suggested emojis or words up here. You could do that if you want. I'm just going to come in and say graphic novel. You can add a description if you want. You can add all sorts of info. I keep it pretty simple because I'm usually just saying like, this is a graphic novel tag. I'll hit create. And now I know that's in my graphic novel tag. Continue scrolling through. I see there's a lot of romance titles recently added. You want to make a romance tag? You could pop over and say, okay, I'm going to do heart and, oh yeah, let's do heart and then fire. Ooh, and I'll do the burning heart too. So now I've got 3 emojis. Now I've got a little romance tag for myself. And you can go through and just pop that one in there as well. Give me some cowboy romance. Why not? Now, when you are ready to go and refer to any of the tags you've created, you're ready to look for that TBR, you're ready to look for that graphic novel tag, go to the navigation bar, tap on the tag, and you can see all of your tag lists. So you can go back and look through all of your borrowed, you can look at anything you're waiting to be notified about, or you can hop into and find your little romance tag. So you can get as granular or as broad as you'd like with any of your tags. The only limitation is your own creativity. So have fun, use this freedom, and make the most out of the Libby experience and enjoy tags however you like to. Like I said, I've got my TBR by year. I've got a DNF list. I have specific thriller genres that get like a little subgenre-y, and the same for horror. So I can do, oh, I just need a haunted house story right now, or here's some body horror, or here's supernatural horror. You can get as granular as you want. Have so much fun with tags in Libby. And tell me how you are using tags in the comments below if you're on YouTube with the video, or if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify, you can do the comments there, or on the post for today's episode on the Libby app Instagram at libby.app. Tell me in the comments below how you are using tags within Libby. All right, now with that, let's go into our final season 1 segment of book recommendations. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our second segment. This is the place where you can get all of our wonderful book recommendations from our amazing guest hosts. Joining me today are Bree, Carmen, and Cece to share all sorts of amazing Latin American books to get you excited and ready for Hispanic Heritage Month. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm so excited you could all be here today. I have gotten to do so much research as like the long history that birthed Hispanic Heritage Month, and it's so exciting to see all of the different things that have changed over the years to grow, but also like just looking at the deep and rich history of Latin American literature in general and all of the different influences. And I'm a I'm a big like lit in translation reader because I love the nuances that come from reading outside of like my first language, that comes from reading outside of my general culture. That's kind of the big thing for me overall. But something about books in this category specifically, there is like a level of poetry and nuance that doesn't exist in English that I think probably makes for some incredibly challenging translations, but it really makes you think when you read. And I feel like there's just this like gorgeous through line, no matter who your storyteller is, that really takes you somewhere incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Before we dive into book racks, any thoughts? Anyone want to start off with anything or any? I don't know. I'm just opening the floor.
I have thoughts on this. This is what I do on my channel quite a bit, and they're kind of tired talking points, but I think that they're really important talking points, especially like when we're recording right now. They're very important talking points. So, only about 6% of traditionally published books in the United States are written by Latinx authors, even though we're about 20% of the US population. And so there is definitely a lack of representation. And that's not to undercut the fact that there's too few books by Black authors, by like all BIPOC, POC authors and queer authors and trans authors. But I focus specifically on Latinx books. And I also see that a lot of the books, they focus on struggle and migrating here and things like that. So I love that you were bringing up Latin American literature and having things that take place there. But I also love the notion of sharing all the lived Latinx experiences in the United States, because we are not a monolith and we all experience language, culture, everything like so incredibly differently. And so it's very nice to see like diversity. And I love to see things translated too, because I love that play of like those words that you can't translate and, seeing how they come up on the page and things like that. And I'm always very interested in like translator notes and things and how they communicate with the author and how they were going to translate certain words and certain things in the books. Yeah, I want to see more Latinx books, and there's a lot of amazing ones. I had trouble kind of bringing the list down to the number we were supposed to recommend today. But I want to see more. So thank you so much for doing this episode. I'm very excited.
Oh, no, thank you. And thank you for those points. There is no tired talking point like that until it is resolved. Until the statistics are balanced, it cannot be a tired talking point.
I think that was beautifully said. The only thing I have to add is like, as a person who is not Latina, what I've been reading a lot. I think we all have been reading a lot. And I don't know if you guys ever thought about like strengths of each culture that you're reading for. I think because I read from so many cultures, you start to see like a similarity between those group of people and how they write. And what I find is a strength in Latina writing is how lyrical it is and how descriptive it is, like almost flowery, and how the pace is more slower for you to understand the actual like impact on what is happening to the characters throughout the book. And I think it's important to say those things because some people are used to like how white and Westerners write, and then they'll read a Latina novel and be like, oh, I can't relate. It's stupid. It's dumb. Without understanding that there is a cultural pace into how it's written. And that's all I wanted to say, is that like every culture has their own string of how they are writing literature.
and that you have to have that in mind when you're talking about how you want to engage in that literature.
Absolutely. I feel like we've talked about that a little bit together, Bree. Maybe in our beach reads when you're talking about. I know we've talked about it with horror, but I can't think of where in the timeline it fell, and I can't believe this is our last episode of the season. But I know that like when you pick up horror, you tend to head toward Black, Indigenous, Japanese. Like those are the kind of horror that tend to draw you in because of those perspectives of storytelling. And right, I think there is something absolutely like lyrical and magical and right, poetic. So I love this. I'm very excited to see what y'all bring today. Of course, I've peeked at the list as well. It's an incredible list, and y'all are going to be spoiled for delicious choices to add to your TBR. We are going to keep you busy for Hispanic Heritage Month. You can celebrate with us by reading these titles. And to kick us off, oh, I feel like I need to roll a dice and just like have all of your names. Cece, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, I can do that. We've been talking about sort of poetry, poetic writing, the lyrical history of Latinx writing. So I want to start by talking about a YA contemporary novel in verse. It's called The Poet X. It is about an Afro-Latina teen named Ziamara who is living in Harlem, and she's trying to navigate her changing feelings about religion and God and how the world has started to treat her differently ever since she developed curves. And the only way that she's kind of able to express her emotions about any of this is through poetry that she keeps in a secret journal. So she ends up being invited to join her school's slam poetry club, which is amazing, but for like every step that she feels like she's taking towards understanding herself, she feels that weight of her mother at home with expectations and strict expectations of what her future's supposed to look like, how she's supposed to fit in the church. It is, like I said, a gorgeous book. I think Elizabeth exclusively writes books that make me like ugly cry. And I almost recommended Clap When You Land because that book is also incredible. if you need another one, but The Poet X was the first one I read, and it really gets at some of the raw and real pain of living in a body that is sexualized completely outside of your control, outside of your consent, and how that can fill you with so much panic, and also how you experience that when you're on the cusp of your first relationship and starting to feel like there is someone who you might want to look at you that way. And that's a really difficult line to navigate as well when you have intense religious expectations looming over you. So I recommend everything Elizabeth writes, but this is gorgeous. And if you get a chance to listen to the audiobook, it is particularly beautiful.
Oh, I love it. Carmen, do you want to give us your next pick?
Sure, I will keep the poetry and lyrical thing kind of going here. So, when I was putting my list together, I wanted to share books that I don't see enough, like people recommending enough by Latinx authors. And even though this one is Ari Tyson has won a bunch of awards for Saints of the Household, I feel like not enough people talk about this book because it's so brilliant. This is a YA contemporary, and it focuses on two brothers. It's Max and Jay. And there are two different points of view of the story, but instead of going back and forth in like chapters or in between chapters, they each have like little sections of the book. And Max's point of view is written all in poems. And then Jay's point of view is like prose, but it's like vignettes of like what is going on. I said vignettes like beignets, and like I have food on my sorry. Vignettes of what is going on, like the action carries forward. So you get this like feel for the characters. Like Max is more like this artist, and like he's kind of feeling all the emotions. And Jay is more like carrying the story along, but they're both like creatives in their own way, and it shows like their creativity in different ways. I'm obsessed. I'm completely obsessed with this book. I'm sorry, I haven't even told you what it's about. So they grew up in in a household where they had an abusive father. And so they learned with the mom basically that to keep their heads down in order to like stay safe. So, trigger warnings for abusive parent and all that. And so you have to, it's a little bit of a hard book, but they're coming home from school at the beginning of the novel, and they think they hear a girl in distress, and they end up beating up the school's soccer star. And what ends up happening is that they're not only is like them looking at college and like their whole future in jeopardy because they don't know what's going to happen. They're also like, they're doubting themselves. They're thinking about like, this trauma that's being passed down to them. They're processing it differently in different ways. And they're just wondering if their whole future is going to just be jeopardized over making a mistake. So it's them processing the events from the beginning of the book. There's one of them is depressed and dealing with all of these depressive emotions. And this book is it's just heartbreaking in so many ways. And then like Ari really turns it around into this gorgeous, life affirming story. They're indigenous Costa Rican, which is a representation in traditional publishing you see so little. And I think it's like Bree, I believe is like the religion that they kind of hearken to and talk about. And so it's such a nuanced and beautiful take that is like not very often represented in traditional publishing. And the story is just fantastic. And I listened to the audiobook after I read it, and it has like 2 different narrators, and it's lovely. So it's a book that you can experience in different ways, whether you read it or listen to the audio.
Oh, that sounds gorgeous. I love the change of form that you have 2 different perspectives coming from each of the siblings. And also, I'm always going to be a sucker for 2 narrators in an audiobook because we have them. Let's let them work. Bree, how about your first pick?
Okay, so I thought I added a book to my list and deleted one, and that was a lie. So I'm going to talk about that book. So I don't know if you guys ever heard of The Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. That is one of my most beloved queer Latine novels ever. And I am not a romance girly, okay? I just want you to know when I come on this podcast, I am talking about stab, stab, murder, murder, stab, stab. I am not a romance girly. But the way that I really wanted a ghost and a live human to get together is serious. So this story follows 2 characters, I think is Julian and Yandrel. I know I'm butchering names. I know I am. But those 2 is from both of their point of views in a way. And it follows the story of Yandrel mostly because he's in a family where he's trying to prove to sorry, I don't want to misgender. They're trying to prove that they are also a brujo. And a lot of times when we talk about like witchcraft and like Latine communities, we talk about like men and then women. And in this book, we're talking about that trans identity of being a person who practiced magic. And Yandrel thought they were about that life and was like, I'm going to go ahead and do a little thing to make somebody come back to life, or like kind of like summoning someone. And they end up summoning someone that they least expected to summon and have to walk alongside them in their journey of them being in the afterlife in a way. But it's like so many things are happening. You're watching Yandrel figure out who they are, what they want to be, and how they fit in their family, things that they're willing to give up, things they're not. You're watching the other person who is a ghost, Julian, really grapple with the fact that they are dead and not really knowing like where they're at, It's kind of like a little bit of a mystery in it as well. So I just really enjoyed that novel. Not often do I cry because I'm just like, you know, it was a good book. That's it. But it really tears you apart. It's just like young love, but it's like also like, do I like him? Do they like me? You know, kind of little thing going on. It's just so cute. It's super, super cute. And I think you should read it. And Aiden Thomas is a Latina trans author, and Aiden is awesome. I've read a couple books that Aiden has written. Again, I want to apologize for misgendering the main character in this book. And yeah, it was beautiful. I don't know what else to add.
Just that, like, this is my RuPaul moment to say, like, if you're not watching Untucked, you're only getting half the story. If you're not watching the podcast, you missed all of us scream in silence when you brought up Cemetery Boys, because
It's
we
highly
all
I almost bought the book out. I said, Bree, don't do it. Is highly tabbed. I'm in the margin. You
I
understand?
love
And
that.
it's so beautiful because I think it was Aiden Thomas' debut novel. So, like, to be your first novel and you're out here killing it in the pen game like this, like, come on.
And when I was pulling up the link for this, just wanted to let you all know that book 2, Espiritu, is coming September 2026. So you got a while to wait, but I'll wait. I'll stay waiting.
Anything for more Cemetery Boys, honestly.
Literally.
I'll put in the
Literally.
time.
I'll put in
Yeah.
that time.
Aiden can take as seriously, take as long as you need. If there's another book coming in this world, I am here for
Listen,
it.
Aiden,
We'll take
I'm
it.
right there. I'm right there with you. And I love, and this is just like a side thing because I'll be stalking him online. Aiden has a beautiful setup of how they write their novels. It's very colorful, very inviting. They're the reason why I was like, you know what, maybe I need a curve monitor to be productive. So anyway, this is an Aiden Stan account for all of us, clearly.
Through
So
and
if
through.
through and
100%.
through. So if you're listening or
Absolutely.
watching, what are you doing with your life? Eating?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Take a pause.
Maybe they need a beignet.
Yeah, get the beignet. I love it. Cece, what's your next pick?
Well, I wanted to talk about another favorite of mine. Like, I don't talk about favorites every single time that I'm here, but this one really is, it's a step above the others for me. It's a literary novel called Cantoras by Caro David Robertis. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous, sweeping novel about a community of 5 queer women beginning in the 1970s in the midst of a Uruguayan dictatorship. It starts in 1977, which is pretty much right in the middle of that military dictatorship. Being gay was a harshly punishable offense, and yet somehow these 5 people find one another. They escape together for a week and find friendship and community and trust in this little fishing hut on the beach. And because of it, they're connected to one another for the rest of their lives. So a cantora is a singer, but these women say cantoras are women who sing. It's their word for women who love women. And they're all from extremely different places, economic statuses, and their lives are not easy. And the relationships with one another are constantly changing. But this book is about sort of the breathtaking, history-altering impact of community and remembering the lives of queer people who fought and loved and sometimes died so that we could love. It is just a book that continues to kind of radiate through my bones, no matter how many years that go by since I read it for the first time. These are some of my favorite characters, and this book is gorgeous. So you should read it.
I will always count on you, Cece, to bring me lesbians that will make me cry. In all the good, in all of the best ways, lesbians that make me cry.
Literally my only goal, so thank you.
Well, you succeed every episode. Carmen, how about you?
So we are filming and recording in a week in U.S. history that I think will be remembered forever with everything going on in LA. So I did make a choice kind of based on that. A lot of people, I think one of the most popular books that recently has been released about crossing the border is Solito by Javier Zamora. But I wanted to recommend different book. I'm cheating and throwing in like a few recommendations. This one is called Children of the Land by Marcelo Hernandez Castillo. He's another, just by coincidence, another poet who has written his memoir. So he has this grasp of language that is just unbelievable. And I think that's part of what makes Solito so powerful. I believe like poets really like sift through things and say things directly in a way that many of us cannot. And so this is Marcelo's story. As a child, he crossed the border and he grew up undocumented in Southern California. And he goes, I think it's like the trauma of crossing the border. He becomes temporarily blind. And so he has all these like similes and metaphors for like his blindness and like hiding in plain sight. And it's just so painful to read because you're like, this is a child like processing all of these things. And there's this part in the book where he's older and, you know, like the blindness was temporary, and he holds open a door for an ICE agent to walk through. And he goes through this whole thing about like, he remembered processing, you know, his paperwork basically like with his family. And it's like, it's all of these things where there's these situations that are seemingly innocuous or that he's safe from, but it brings up all of these emotions and traumas. And it's just one of the most devastatingly beautiful memoirs I've ever read. And I think it's just a really important book for humanizing the undocumented experience and for people to understand that, you know, it's like people are not illegal. Like people are just trying to live their lives. And also I think that there's an important message with being an immigrant. Like we're not all workers here. Like we are people with full entire lives and families and things. And this is a book that really captures that. And I feel like it maybe came out like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's still extremely, extremely relevant today and this week in particular.
Oh, thank you for that. It is such a beautiful book. It came out in 2020, and yeah, this is one that I've been reflecting on for sure this past week, and it's, I don't know. I cannot say anything that adds to what you have said. So just thank you. Oh, Bree, what's next?
I just want to echo what Carmen said and to remind viewers and readers that human beings are not illegal on stolen land. And I think we need to always keep that in our minds and interrogate why things are happening and who's benefiting from those systems. I think that's important. With that being said, I'm like, which one do I talk about? I'll talk about an author who I found in 2017. And I was like, I'm going to read all of his stuff. And then I was like, I don't know. But, but because it's like, it can be like very similar. It's like if you guys are listening or watching, I love Maya Angelou and I've read everything that she's written. But there is one book that has pretty much everything that she's written in that book. And she just expands it in every other book that she writes. So that is how I feel Paulo Coelho writes, is that you can just see an expansion of the alchemist in a way in a lot of his books. So I'm going to talk about, it's called The Spy or Spahunka in Ukrainian. I've read the book in Ukrainian and in English. This book really had me thinking, you know what, Matahari? You were out here. You were out here in these streets. You said, Esplanade, sign me up, lift a leg. You were going to get the job done. And you said, I'm going to live well. I want y'all to know that I lived boldly, fiercely, while also paying the price that she did in the end. And I think it's just, I love a retelling of someone's story. And I believe Paulo Coelho used her last letter to the world to really inspire him in writing this novel. And if you're interested in Mata Hari and want to read a retelling of her A lot of people have mixed feelings on her and what she does and her stance in history, which also should be interrogated. But I think if we're looking just for a fictional novel that's giving us aspects about her life from a Latine author, specifically an author who speaks Portuguese, which I think is a very flowery language, this is the book for you.
I love it. I love it. Matahari, here we come. Cece, what's next?
I am gonna jump over to my other YA book, I think. Because I when I was making my list, I felt like I had to make sure I had at least one magical realism book on my list, just because of the history of magical realism and its connection as a genre purely to Latin American history. So it's one of my absolute faves again, Wild Beauty by Anna Marie McLemore. This is about a family of women, the Nomiovides women, who can never permanently leave the magical garden estate that they grow and maintain under the watchful eye of the land's owners, a family called the Briars. So these women have the ability to grow the flowers of the gardens they maintain from their hands. And yet, every one of them also carries a curse that if any of them should fall in love too deeply, their lover will vanish. And so there is this history of tragedy that has followed them, but community, because all this family have is one another. And then after years and years of vanishings, the garden gives something back, and a boy with no memory of who he is appears. And everyone in the family is kind of obsessed with him, but also terrified of his implications. This book has some of my favorite big family scenes in fiction ever. There's such a warmth to reading all of the different sequences of these generations of women coming together to cook for one another. It's one of my favorite expressions of love in literature, just cooking for one another, and this book resonates with that so strongly for me. Also, pretty much everybody in this book is bisexual, very queer book, and if you are looking for more queer Latinx books, I would definitely recommend Anna Marie McLemore. That is a very good avenue to go down. They have such an incredible backlist. This book is like a little odd to pitch because it is more atmospheric and character driven, but it is so worth it for the gorgeous writing, and it is beautiful because it is ultimately about generational trauma and the long-reaching scars of colonialism. So it's beautiful and it hits on every level.
Beautiful and hits on every level. Straight and to the point. Exactly that. Oh, I love it. Okay, Carmen, are we at book number 3 already? I never want our recommendations to end, but today especially, there is something in the air where I'm like, no, we can't be almost there.
Can't believe how quickly it's going. Like I just looked at the clock and I'm like, how is time passing? Which I think is actually a really great introduction to this book, which is called it's called Magical Realism by Vanessa Angelica Villarreal. This is uh, it's a memoir through essays of cultural criticism, which it's very oddly specific form of nonfiction that I have discovered I really love. And in this particular case, this book is like National Book Award nominee, and Vanessa's just a brilliant like follow on social media, even. But like Vanessa is dealing with like music, pop culture, fantasy books, and she's processing like borders and colonialism and all of these unexpected things. The genesis for the story was she had just become a mother, and she wanted to go to Mexico to get her grandmother's stories as like the sort of legacy for her child. And it started her, I don't know, her brain, like she's so smart. I've interviewed her and I could just listen to Vanessa talk forever. Um, and she starts one place and just very gently guides you somewhere else. Like one of the things that I thought was very unexpected in this book was her talking about Game of Thrones. And I can't believe I never like put the wall together, but the way she like, like builds that up and talks about like Jon Snow and the wall. And I was like, Vanessa, I don't know how you did that, but it's brilliant. And it's like, it's just so unexpected. she talks about like Beyonce and Selena and like connects them. And it's just like this book that at the same time, she's also like dealing with like new motherhood, dealing with the grief because dealing with grief and dealing with all of these things, as well as her identity and like, just kind of what the border means for being like Mexican American and who holds the power of the story. And it's so brilliant. She also talks about gaming. She talks about The Witcher. I don't know. Her brain just goes places, and I don't know how she does it, but she's absolutely brilliant. And this book is just absolutely phenomenal. And like the conclusion, just like the very last chapter of the book, I just sobbed, and I was like, this is how like someone's really just put themselves out on the line. It was just a visceral reaction. This book is perfect. Thank you.
This book is perfect. Thank you. I love that. I love that conclusion. I will also be basic and say it. What a gorgeous cover. I mean, these have all been stunning, but there is something about this one that just like the design of it absolutely portrays everything you've described, Carmen, like just a little bit everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree. Judge the book by the cover.
Hey, when they're all this good, you can. Okay, Brie, what is your next pick?
I didn't realize we were going in order, and I saw that you were changing it, so I am so sorry, Joe. I
Oh,
just be choosing. I'd be like,
that's okay.
yeah, whatever I'm feeling.
You are always allowed to do that. I just update it for my notes later. You're good.
I was like, oh my God, I got him doing extra work. Okay.
No, it's the power of a living document.
It really is. It really is. I read this book most recently, and I was like, this has to be one of my favorite books of the year. It started off like so slow that I was so confused in a way. You ever read a book, you're like, it's so slow that I think I'm losing what's happening here. And then it picked up and you're like, oh my God, it's about to go down. So that is Vampires of El Norte. This book is set in the late 1800s. And when I tell you this book owes me nothing, but I will say frustration was a consistent feeling while reading this book because there's two main characters. And I really suck at remembering characters' name. And if you would have asked me last week, I would have told you. But right now, I'm sorry for the listeners and viewers. I don't have the names of the main characters, but it's two main characters. They met in childhood and they are literally in different, not only socioeconomic statuses, they are also just different people. And they are, how do I describe it? So I'm trying to get my words together because I'm so excited to talk about it. And I'm just like, gotta get my words together. So one of the main characters, who is a little girl, she is raised in a family where her family has a lot of wealth. Her dad has a big name behind him and he owns the ranch that they're living in. And she also have a lot of privilege that comes along with being the daughter of this ranch person, and also a lot of woes where it's like you can really see the machismo in this book. You can also see how she's like, because I'm a girl, that doesn't mean that my only life is surrounding around marriage. And then just as a caveat, you have her mother that I don't think we often talk about, is how women also drive the wheel of patriotism and patriarchal society, sorry, is what I'm trying to say. And a lot of times it's like you're fearful of your daughter and you want to make sure that she gets in line, because if you're outside of societal norms, you're stunned and the family name is ruined, etc. I understand it from the mom's point of view, but I felt like I was more in tune with the young woman, of her being like, I am worth more than to be of service to some man. Okay? To some man. And then you have said man, is who we're going to talk about, who I thought, I actually really liked him in childhood and how they played and how they got along. And then, something tragic happens, which is why the story is called The Vampires of El Norte. And someone is believed to be passed on. And he runs away, and then the story takes a turn. And what I will say is that never judge a book by a cover, right? I also will say that in this book, you have a lot of family secrets being woven to it. You have a lot of historical elements, which I thought was done very well, to talk about like how Texas and the United States and how people had to fight for their land and, had to reconcile that these Yankees are coming in and these Yankees are trying to take their land and was successful in it in a lot of ways. And how do you survive and hold on to your indigeneity? Because that's what I felt like it was. How do you hold on to your indigeneity while also having to deal with so many colonizers, right? Whether they were Spanish, whether they were English, they were colonizers. I think a lot of people don't think that Spain was a colonizer. They was, just to let y'all know, colonizing. So for me, I really love the story. It also has a romance. If anybody here for a little romance, you can definitely get you a romance. That's a part of it. I think to me, the romance and the horror went hand in hand. I felt like they could not operate without each other, which I think is done really well. Not a lot of authors can do that. A lot of authors will put horror in a romance and you're like, we didn't need that. Or put a romance in a horror and you're like, you could have just deleted that chapter, sis. We did not need the cliff notes on that. But this author did a very good job at combining those two. And I think the story writing was beautiful. The pace, at first I was annoyed with the pace, but then it definitely pays off. So I definitely think this is a book you want to keep after it. So yeah, I hope that I explained the novel. I kind of feel like I was just talking about the characters as individuals, but you get the gist.
No, I think that's the way. That's you got to buy into this because you need to see how this story builds on that
Absolutely.
slow build and where it takes you to. Oof,
Absolutely.
such a good. Okay. Final round. Cece.
Hey. Well, I think it's interesting, Bree, that you just talked about something that like it takes its time because the last book I want to talk about is the most notable thing I think about it is that I read it in sort of a mad haze of one sitting. And I can't imagine doing it another way. For people who are watching, it's like a small little book. This is Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin, translated by Megan McDowell. It's so tiny. I picked this up one day, I started reading it, and I didn't put it down until I was done reading it. So this book is weird and unsettling and is perfect for something thought-provoking that you want to get through in a single sitting, but I also think it's going to be a different reading experience every time you revisit it, which is a cool thing for me. We're thrown very much into the middle of the action. We meet a woman named Amanda who is dying in a rural hospital clinic, and there's a boy that she doesn't know named David who sits beside her, and he is eerily calm and alert, and he is asking questions that he insists are very, very important. So Amanda's trying to kind of tell the story of how she wound up in this clinic, but she's feverish and confused, and David's questions make little to no sense. So this book becomes kind of an unsettling bedside interrogation that is a wild journey about motherhood, fear, and toxins. So this is literary horror. It's not necessarily scary, but it is haunting and it is surreal. And Samantha has a ton of other work as well, including a couple of incredible short story collections. And then she just had a new literary horror collection come out earlier this year. I think it was Good and Evil and Other Stories. So brand new, sounds absolutely fantastic. Fever Dream is accurately titled. It is very Fever Dream-esque to read, but it is definitely one of those fascinating books, especially when we were talking about literature and translation earlier. It's phenomenal.
I mean, you said it. The title has never been more appropriate than on this book. And like the quote from Juan Gabriel Vesquez for this book is a wonderful nightmare of a book, tender and frightening, disturbing but compassionate. Like, yes, it's, as Cece said, it's a short pickup. I cannot call it an easy read, but you can absolutely have a fever dream of a time with it.
Yeah, heavy on disturbing.
Yes.
It was very disturbing when I read it. I was like, okay.
All right then. Like I know they got us, but it's so good. Okay. Carmen, your last pick.
Okay, I know I've been bringing the nonfiction, but we're gonna circle back. We're gonna bring it back to a place of horror with my favorite author, Silvia Moreno Garcia. She has a book that at the point we're recording is not out, but I think at the point you will be listening will be out. So Sylvia has come back. This is a horror novel. She's doing what she does best, which is multiple points of view. In the case of this story, the multiple points of view are through 3 different timelines. And I literally had to write my notes because I was like, I'm going to forget everything. So I'm not going to read it, but I'm reading from a note because to keep everything straight. So the first point of view we have is 1908. This is Alba. Her father suddenly dies and her brother disappears. And her family's like, no, there's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong. And there is the close family friend, Valentine, who he's the only person that believes that something might be wrong. And she's kind of going through her experience. Then we have in 1938, we have Beatrice Tremblay, who is a college student who wants to be a horror writer. I love when books are meta like this too, by the way. And her roommate, Virginia, disappears, and she writes her debut novel, Vanishing, about the real life events around her roommate's disappearance. Now, her roommate, Virginia, who disappears, is like this eccentric artist and may have this connection to like the afterlife and to ghosts. So, we're seeing a pattern here. Then we're in 1988, and there is Minerva, who is connected to Alba because Alba is her grandmother. And her connection to Beatrice is that she's at the same college that Beatrice was at, where Virginia disappeared. And she's obsessed like with Beatrice's manuscript that was never released. It's kind of like this rumor. And she ends up leading to Carolyn, who was Beatrice's former best friend. So the author's former best friend, who's married to Edgar, who is, I literally wrote the note, vanished Virginia's former fiance. So you can, like, I'm sitting here and I'm like that like GIF, and I'm like, here's all the different plot and the points and everything. So what Sylvia does really well is that she's master at pacing. So you have to get all of this right. You have to get all of these different voices like right in your head. And Sylvia does a great job of like building each character's voice, and she intersperses these stories like throughout one another. So you'll see like something happen, and then like in 1908 and then in 1998, you're like, oh, like this is calling back the point. So she very slowly and masterfully builds all of these connections. It's a little spooky, it's a little scary. And she has this thing with pacing where like right when you're like, oh, it's a little too slow, whatever, Sylvia puts her foot on the gas and your head starts to explode and you can't believe it. So I just really love this book. I have to now re-rank all of my Silvia Moreno Garcia books because this one has really like it's up in, I'm not going to say but it's one of the top ones. And I really enjoyed this book, and I really feel for people who Seventh Veil Salome, they were like, oh, it's straight historical fiction. I feel like in a way, like Sylvia has really come back into the style that is truly like something that she excels at. So everyone should pick it up and read it and be scared with me.
The amount, because of course we're recording, it's not out yet. The amount of like cannot wait for this book. One of my coworkers just finished it and was screaming about how good it was, and she said it may be better than Mexican Gothic, which is her favorite Silvia Moreno Garcia. Yes, as everyone goes, what? But that's the like hot tea from the Libby offices to be like, this might be the one. There's just everything about this sounds so good. And yes, at the time that you're listening to this, it will have been out for a few weeks, but we're getting a treat. Another beautiful Silvia Moreno Garcia book to read. Okay, Bree. It's that time. Your final pick.
Listen, when it comes to Silvia Moreno, I'm gonna Garcia every time. You have to understand, okay? I love her. She's one of my favorite horror writers, and I'm standing on that. And I did have her on this list. I did. But since I saw you put a pic of her, I had Mexican Gothic. I was going to talk about it. But then I know, Carmen. I
Oh,
know.
Brie, I'm so sorry I took that away from you.
No, you
I'll
didn't.
recommend
I
another
was
one.
just no. The reason why I switched is because, like you said, 6% in publishing. I wanted to make sure there are different authors. So as soon as I saw that, I said, I knew you would sell it. I knew you would kill it, which you did. So then I was like, let me just choose somebody else. So that's totally fine. You did
Great.
that.
Thank you. I
You
appreciate
did that. You absolutely did that. So who I want to talk about is, oh my God, I need to work on my spelling and pronunciation while I'm trying to be a linguist. Huh? What's going on? Okay, so The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina is a novel that I would love to talk about with y'all today. This novel, to me, as soon as you read it, you can feel the magic lift off the page. I don't know if that makes quite a lot of sense, but it's like, there's magic involved from day one. And even if you think you're kind of reading a mundane chapter or just like a flat area, if it is one, I would argue there is none. But if you feel like it's down, you still feel like the magic is still there. And this is a story of a woman that we don't really know much about. We just get introduced and we know that she's the head of the family. And her name is uh Orquídea Divina. And she's the matriarch of this family of the Montoyas. And she has, quite a few of descendants. And everyone always wondered, like, grandma has a real secretive vibe to her. She won't even leave her house. She won't do anything. And then she dies, turns into a tree, which I think is really dope, that the tree part of the book. But she dies and then she gives people, tell them to come to her funeral so that she can give them their inheritance. And you're watching I'm always saying watching, you're reading the book and you are learning what part of her magic system went into all of these descendants and how it's being manifested. And I thought it was a beautiful way of showing how things can be generational, but there's also like a thread of deceit as well while you're reading this book. So I think that's like really important to address as well. And then to me, I love reading a book that is going back and forth in time. Like Carmen was talking about, a strength of Sylvia Moreno Garcia is like multiple POVs. And I think a strength of just Latinx writers, period, is how they can go back and forth in time and not confuse you. Okay. A lot of authors can confuse the hell out of you, but Latinx authors most likely won't do that. I was talking earlier about my pick. What was it? Vampires of El Norte. And to me, I feel like that book, it went in and out of time as well. And the reason why I loved it is because the heading of each chapter let you know the year that they were in, so you could easily follow along. And a lot of authors, especially in the Western world, will start being like, Jimmy was this and Jimmy. And then you're like, Sarah. Wait, is Sarah in the present or is Sarah in 1764? Where the hell is Sarah? And bring Sarah ass back here. Iota. You hear me? So I just really think Latinx authors were really in their bag, as some say, when they talk about multiple POVs and going back and forth of time. So definitely give The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina. I'm messing up the words. I know I am. Give this book a try if you're looking for magic, family systems, how magic is being manifested in descendants, and like a magic system that I don't think we often talk about, because there is a lot of magic in being the matriarch of your family. I think also is what the book is pulling at as well, especially when we're talking about Latinx communities. So with that being said, that is our last book recommendation.
I'm still crying over where the hell is Sarah. bring
Because
bring Sarah here. Where is she?
where is she?
But
You don't know.
you are so right, Brie. The magic system in this is gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation of inheritance, that the whole scene of just like passing on and passing down,
Mm-hmm.
and what that means and what that looks like, and like just the beautiful, the kind of beautiful correlation between like, this is what I'm making a statement on and this is how I'm veiling it through literature is just
Yeah.
oof, so good.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, it's so beautiful because it's like in this book, not only are you getting to understand how the matriarch power is manifested in her descendants, you also get her perspective. And I think a lot of times when we think about like a boomer generation, how they don't talk and how they're like not really engaging or talking about emotion, there's always a trauma related to that. And you understand that while you're reading this book. People ain't just talking because they don't want to ha 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 kiki. A mug been through some things. A mug seen some things, you know? So it's really interesting of how the book was written, and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you all for being here and for sharing some incredible titles to get the listeners hopefully all set and ready for Hispanic Heritage Month. Any final thoughts before we go?
Be sure to be aware and donate and follow and support people who are in the front lines in LA right now. They're fighting to be seen as a human, which sounds crazy, but it is the world that we're living in right now.
It's going on everywhere in this country, and if you feel hopeless because LA, you may not live in LA, you can probably find an organization locally that would love your help or money or a combination of both. So, don't feel hopeless. The immigrant community, the one thing I know as the daughter of immigrants, is incredibly strong and incredibly resilient. And there's a lot of ways to help. Just put yourself out there to try to be the helper. And yeah, I don't know. It's all uncertain, but it is very heartening to see um, the response, the large scale response that is going on right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much, and thank you for ending us on a beautiful note of what we can do, how we can all be a part of shaping the future in a better way. And there is a message of hope. No matter how hopeless or helpless you may feel, we can all do something to protect our fellows. So thank you all so much for joining us for segment 2. Now let's head over to me in a different outfit with maybe a different beard color, who knows, doing an outro. What an incredible end to season 1 of the new Book Lounge by Libby. I am truly so grateful y'all are here, and I hope you've had an amazing time with me this season. I have had the most fun, and this is so different, and I'm so excited. Thank you for being here. I couldn't be more honored than to have the chance to talk to everyone this season, deepen my thoughts and understanding of the world of books and publishing and creation, and I hope you got something amazing out of every episode this season. Thank you to all of my guests and to my guest hosts coming with incredible book recs. And as we close out this episode, of course, thank you to Ann Dávila Cardinal and Isabel Cañas, as well as Cleyvis Natera, Isabel Ibañez, and Tamara Yajía. And where would we be without our guest hosts who gave us incredible recommendations centering Latinx voices in that list? Thank you to Carmen, Brie, and Cece for joining me today. Now, make sure you are subscribed and following the show. While we may be heading into our first off season, it won't be long before I'm back with more incredible guests. For now, keep an eye out for monthly episodes here in your feed to keep you satisfied while we wait for season 2. And check out libbylife.com/book lounge for our exclusive bonus content. Follow at libby.app on Instagram for podcast updates. And you can reach me via email. Send an email to bookloungebyLibby@overdrive.com. Thank you for being here and for supporting the show. Thank you so much. Again, like, comment, subscribe, do all those important internet things so you don't miss what's coming next. I will see you at the end of September for season 2, as well as some in-between bonus content. In the meantime, thank you all so much for joining me today. And as always, happy reading! You can sample and borrow the books from today's episode in the Libby app, or if you're a librarian, find them for purchase in Overdrive Marketplace. Book Lounge by Libby is a proud Evergreen Podcast signature program. Explore more amazing shows at evergreenpodcasts.com. This podcast is produced and recorded by me, Joe Skelly, with editing by Andrew Alonso. Our theme music is High Five by Rex Banner, used with permission. Book Lounge by Libby is presented by the Libby app. Learn more at libbylife.com/booklounge.